Today's guest is Brent Staton. He's the co-founder and CEO of RS Group LLC. All right, Brent, thank you for coming on the show.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, your background, logistics, entrepreneurship, topics that I love. It's gonna be fun digging into your background.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to talk about it.
For sure. I mean, last day when we talked, you talked about, you have two different aspects to your business. You have your sort of logistics side of your business, and you have your warehouse side. And you described like two different like business models. One's kind of like sales outreach driven, sort of, banging out calls or whatever that entails.
Yep.
And one is more relational. Yeah, so I'm always interested in business models. Can you explain the different business models and how you got there?
Sure. So we'll start with the logistics business because that's what I started. I started in 2010 in that business, and I stayed in that business solely through 2021, and really 2022 is when I sort of diversified. So the bulk of my career is in logistics side, and the freight brokerage business is an exciting, fast-paced business to be in. It is a it has become a commoditized business. And what happens when you become a commodity is to drive good sales growth and sales volume, it's a numbers game. And it is how many businesses can you reach out to? How many businesses can you introduce yourself to? Um, Not every business wakes up every morning and says, I need a new freight broker to work with today. So, what you have to do is your strategy has to be built around being known with as many people and as many companies as possible so that on the day when they have a problem, an unsolvable problem, or they have a dispute with their existing vendor, a light bulb goes off in their head and they go, you know what, this guy called me earlier, he sent me an email. I'm going to let him look at my problem, and I'm going to let him propose a solution. Well, those chances are few and far between in our industry, and so it becomes a numbers game. It becomes a game of talking with as many people as you possibly can, for as long as you possibly can, so that you up the percentage of times that you run into that scenario. And just to give you a really good number that I tell my new sales reps when they join the business, I tell them I've made 100,000 cold calls in my life, and I have 120 customers. So, it was one of those things where you have to have a large quantity of swings at bats, because hitting that home run doesn't come very often. And so to grow the logistics side of our business, we have to touch lots and lots and lots of businesses. Our sales teams are making cold calls all day long, whether they're in person here in Atlanta or whether they're over the phone on a national basis. We are trying to introduce ourselves to almost, our numbers right now are 2,500 to 3,000 companies a week. And that's just the first touch. Getting from first touch to stage two is then the next goal. But if you can touch 1,000 businesses to book 50-second touches, to book 10 meetings, to close 2 customers in our business, I think you're doing pretty well. You're really doing quite well. So our logistics business is a quantity, and you, to become a great sales rep in our business, your quality comes along with the amount of swings you have at the plate. It's I find myself using baseball references with my sales teams all the time, but in reality, baseball is a great sport to talk about with sales reps because it's about practice. It is about how many times can you walk up to that plate and try to hit a home run. And if you can do it more than anybody else in this business, you're going to be successful. To switch over to our warehousing and asset business, it I made that transition when in 2022 I started having conversations with a longtime client of mine who had become a trusted friend, advisor. I mean, when you work with a customer for 10 years, your partnership becomes incredibly strong. You know each other's families and their kids, and I mean, you just get to know people. He and I started having conversations about a partnership in 2022. His business was doing really well on the tail end of COVID. My business was doing really well on the tail end of COVID. And we started having conversations about what it would look like if we pushed the businesses together. It's been an excellent decision for us to merge the two businesses together. But I, as the leader of the business, had to understand that the way you grow a warehousing business and the way you grow a distribution and final mile business is not through cold call. It is through networking and relationship building. And that's because when a conflict or a new opportunity comes across a traffic manager or a chief logistics officer or somebody's desk, they need to think of somebody that they've met, that they've maybe heard a referral for or a personal reference, and then you can be sort of a known entity in your space, so that when opportunities pop up, the opportunities are then routed for you to take a look at an RFP, to take a look at a request, to dive in. So when I merged the businesses together and took over the sales side, my business partner does the operation side of the business. I run revenue growth. I had to learn a new way of growing and building good relationships. And it's been an exciting transition for me over the past 2.5 years to diversify how my company goes to market. Using the tools we have, using LinkedIn, using ZoomInfo, using ACG and YPO and Vistage and all of these big networks where you can get out and you can meet the movers and shakers and decision makers in the space and create a referral network and create a reference network. And that has yielded the most results for us in the warehousing business. So it was a training. When you're 12 to 15 years into your career, you kind of feel like you don't have to learn new tricks. But when you dive into a new business like this, you do have to learn new tricks. And so it's been an exciting couple of years to rebuild a go-to-market strategy for the entire company, to train our sales reps to think both transactionally and contractually. And it's just been an exciting time for us to dive in and learn new things, and the expansion of the network has been a lot of fun as well, because I've met some unbelievably interesting, really cool people who are doing really cool things. And then there's a motivation piece that comes with that. When you meet these people and you go, wow, these guys are killing it, they're crushing it, they're thinking outside the box. I always leave those interactions kind of fired up to come back to my home base and rah the troops into tackling something maybe we weren't prepared for. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now, just going back to the first business, which is, the volume, get in front of people. You said 100,000 outreach, right, to get, 120 really good customers.
yep.
Um, did that sort of like, call it resilience, come naturally to you? Did you find a way to build it up? Did you gain it from playing sports or something? Like, where not everyone has that in them. Where did that come from?
I'm glad you brought up sports. Yes, I was an athlete growing up. I played competitive tennis for a long time, and I think competitive tennis had a good effect on me. Playing both a single sport where you are your own team, and I'm a tall guy. I'm 6'6", and so I started high school at about 5'6", and I finished 10th grade at 6'6". All of a sudden, a basketball coach came up and he wanted to talk to me, and I had never played a team sport. ever. I had played tennis, singles USTA tennis for 15 years. I think I started at 5 years old, and so for 10 years I had been playing, but it was me. I would go to practice to get myself better. I would go do tournaments where it was me against the field. And so some of that resilience was definitely built up by playing tennis, because I didn't have a team member who, when I was having a bad day, a team member could step in and pick me up and get me to the win. It was me, myself, and I. So I'll tie that in just a second to the entrepreneurship journey. But also, being a part of team sports with basketball was another huge piece of my entrepreneurship career, because it gave me the tools for, it is my responsibility to be practicing every day. It is my responsibility to be conditioning. It is my responsibility to keep momentum up. So the tennis gave me the skills that I needed when I was a junior sales rep, and I would jump in my car in the morning and drive to North Atlanta. And I knew I had to go knock on 50 doors that day. That was my goal every day. So I would write down on a post-it note three things I want to accomplish today. And so I approached every day as if I was showing up for a match, and I needed to win today, because you don't build a $10 million business in one bite. You build a $10 million business one call at a time. And the skills I learned as a young athlete, that practice never ends, that even when you're a champion, you still got to practice to be a champion again. You don't, Kobe Bryant didn't stop shooting free throws when he won a championship. He was in the gym the next day making sure that he was going to win a championship the next year. So being an athlete certainly helped me early on in my sales career, because I made it a game. I would head out every day with a goal to win the day. I would focus on a couple things I needed to practice. I would keep track of the bad cold calls. I would keep track of the good cold calls. But I was always out there for the win. You get a new customer, you get a new opportunity. You would be fueled by that good momentum. And then when I started my business in 2016, so when I was a junior sales rep, I started at a company. I had 3 people around me. We grew that to 54 people, I think, by the time I left. So we had this big team, lots of momentum, lots of competition, great culture. And then I went off on my own. And I was in the 3rd bedroom of my little house, me, myself, and I. I had no sales manager. I had no leader. I had to manage myself. I had to set the goals. I had to set the expectations. And I did that actually from 2016 all the way through January of 2020. I did not hire my first US based employee until January of 2020. So I was able to use the skills that I learned as a young athlete to self manage myself and to achieve goals, to practice, to be consistent, to shoulder momentum. I dealt with a lot of adversity in my tennis career, because I was a top ranked tennis player at 10 years old and 12 years old. But when I went through sort of those normal changes as a young man between 12 and 15, I had big feet and I was uncoordinated, and my tennis game collapsed. I wasn't even ranked in the state for a while. So I went from winning everything to winning nothing. And that helped. My father was a huge, huge piece of that. He taught me the resiliency that through failure is success. And that's how I approached every day with sales. Like, I knew there were going to be days where I was going to make 50 cold calls and get 50 doors slammed in my face. But if I kept coming back and I kept putting the numbers up, I started seeing that momentum, I started seeing that traction, and I started building. And once you've got the momentum, if you're a talented person who understands how to control momentum and let momentum be the energy, you can harness that. And I use an analogy with my sales reps that when they're just getting started, they're going to make 5,000 cold calls in that first month. I mean, they have nothing else to do. But what I tell them is you're building a wave. You're building a wave of momentum. You're building a wave of opportunity. It may feel like you're doing nothing. It may feel like you're getting nowhere. But if you keep building that wave, eventually it will crest. Opportunities will start to come in. You'll start to see your email will start to fill up with new opportunities. You'll start getting, swings with new customers, and then the wave crests. And that's when you start feeling the results of all of that the early work you put in when it felt like you were doing nothing. I mean, when you get started in this game and you're making 100 cold calls every day and that's all you do, there are days where you feel like you're doing nothing. But it's when after time and time again, I've seen it where it clicks. All of a sudden they go, oh, I got it. I'm starting to see it now. I'm starting to see that, the more numbers I put up, the more opportunities I get. And as I progress, my batting average goes up because I'm getting better at it. I'm practicing it every day. And I'm able to, if I was able to win one of 100 deals last month, I'm going to win two of 100 deals this month, and the next month, three of 100 deals, to where you can get up to where every call you get on with a customer, you're like, I'm going to close this business. I'm going to get it. I'm that confident. So yes, the being an athlete is huge for our business, and it couldn't be any more on display than it is right now. I hired a sales manager back in August. He was a Division I football player from Murray State. He has absolutely changed the game for us on our sales training and our sales development and our sales management, because he's really running our sales team like a sports coach. He comes in every day with good energy, with a practice first mentality, and I'm seeing significant changes in the culture of our sales office. And the only thing I did was I brought in a football guy.
Yeah.
I didn't bring in some sales savant. I brought in a guy who knows how to motivate people, at their soul, and make them want to come do it and do the hard work, because cold calling is not glamorous. It is not easy. It is one of the hardest things to do. But I've met some really cool people in this world that did the cold calling and have achieved some really incredible things.
Yeah. Now, how did your recruiting process go? Because, football background is not, not everyone's first go-to.
Yep.
Like, how did you know that this person could possibly be a good fit?
So when I first had, what I did is I did a two-pronged strategy. I went to, back at the beginning of the summer, I did a mass FedEx blast of handwritten letters to athletic departments with universities around within maybe a 3 or 4 hour drive of Atlanta. I needed to keep it into a radius where a kid that's graduating, let's say from Georgia, would come to Atlanta for his first job, or maybe Savannah, or maybe Macon, or Birmingham. And so I've started talking to a lot of universities, and through that process was when I was talking to an athletic director who told me that he thinks that football guys make the best sales managers, because football, look, tennis, to practice tennis, you go out and you play tennis. Okay. To practice basketball, you go out and play basketball. To practice golf, you go out and you play golf. To practice football, you go to football practice and you don't play football ever. You go and you practice very basic skills and you perfect those skills, so that when you get in the game on Friday night, all the skills you practice come together to deliver in that moment of when you're on the field. So I went to my recruiter at the time that I was talking to, and I said, I want you to find me a football guy. And it was just when you're in business long enough, you're going to come across somebody, and it's just going to be that perfect timing. And it was just one of those things where I had the conversation with my recruiter, and he's like, dude, this is so weird. I literally just had a call with a guy, 10 years of experience, sales manager, Division 1 football. I'd love to introduce you. And it just happened really quickly back in the summer. I met the guy a couple times and I was like, this is the guy. This is the future of our sales organization. I really felt really good about it. And it has turned out to be one of the best hires. Honestly, I believe he's probably the best hire that I've made in my career so far. Because, you just know. I mean, when you hire the right people, you just know when you've got a real winner. And I think we got a really great winner with this guy.
Wonderful. And one thing about entrepreneurship is it tests you in different ways, but allows you an opportunity to elevate using self-awareness. I see EOS visionary on your thing, so you probably went through a process of sort of figuring that out.
Yeah.
Tell me about the visionary, I guess the EOS visionary, I guess the integrator role, and how did you come to that point where you knew you were a visionary and you had that structure?
Um, well, we use an operating system within our business, which is EOS. It's called an entrepreneurial operating system, and so there are two main components to that operating system. There's the integrator and there's the visionary. My team, obviously, they elected me to be the visionary. I I'm the idea guy, and I've always been the idea guy. To their annoyance, most of the time, to their annoyance, because I come back from a networking event and I've got 67 ideas I want to unload onto them, and they've got to figure out how to process all the ideas. They've gotten very very good at telling me which ideas they think are terrible, and they've gotten good at helping me define the ones that are good and the ones I need to go flesh out. Um, no, the visionary role comes fairly naturally for me. I suffer from pretty severe ADD or ADHD, and ADHD for me, I used to look at it in a negative way. And then a couple of years ago, I sort of pivoted on that as, this can be a superpower if it's put into the right, into if it's done properly. So I
Okay.
struggle with the busy work details of a business. I did it from 2016 through 2020 because I had to do it. I didn't have anybody else on my team to do it. But as soon as I started hiring the right people to do the work within the business, and it gave me the capacity to really drop into the visionary role where I start looking 90 days ahead, I start looking 180 days ahead, and now 1 year ahead. Where does this business need to be? I find my energy level is way higher when I am solely focused on people. Who are the people we have? Who do we need? What are the systems that we have? Which systems do we need to replace? It's all forward thinking. It's all, analyzing what's working and not working and preparing for the future. Those activities bring me a ton of energy. They're the ones that I shoot out of bed in the morning ready to go tackle the world. So, I have days where I've got to dig in on the company and I've got to work in the company and solve problems in the company. But a true visionary is going to have a great integrator, and that integrator makes the trains run on time.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure the trains are full of people, and I get a ton of energy out of that. So the visionary role comes very naturally to me. I'm always questioning everything. I'm always, out there hunting for what it is that we're missing and how we get ready. And we're doing annual planning right now, and this is my favorite time of year because you get to look at your whole year in retrospect. You get to plan for the future. I get a ton of excitement out of planning for the future and trying to devise the right plan on how we're going to achieve those goals. So, yeah, I think when I fully felt myself in the visionary role, it's the first time I felt super comfortable in a role. So,
Great. I love it. See what else. You're also a part of peer mentoring group. I've been a part of them. They're great.
Yeah.
How does that fit into your sort of business and entrepreneurial experience?
This is another perfect example of the world sometimes gives you what you need as long as if you're looking for it, if you're open-minded, the world will put you in a spot and give you an opportunity at the exact moment you need it. And the reason I say that is so summer 2020, Christian and I are heavily negotiating what the merger of our businesses are going to look like. And to be completely honest with you, up until that time, I never even really considered myself a CEO. I just considered myself a very, very good sales rep who just happens to have to run a business on the side. And when I started digging in on what the future of the RS group was going to look like, and Christian and I had conversations about me being the CEO and what that entails, I started having sort of, those imposter syndrome thoughts of like, I'm not ready for this. I don't have the skills for this. It was at that exact moment in the summer of 2022 that I took a lunch with one of my mentors, who was an old Home Depot executive. Great guy. He's been amazing to me since the beginning. He's always been there for me. And I shared with this, and I said, look, I'm about to go down a road where we're going to 10x our company, and I need to shed this high performing sales rep skin and grow up into being a CEO. And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, well, you need Vistage. And I was like, I don't even know what Vistage is. I've never heard of it. Within 2 hours after that lunch, he had introduced me to two people within Vistage. I had a call with both of them. They introduced me to Sean Bradley, who is my chair with Vistage. I had a call with him later that afternoon. And I was sold really, really quickly that this was how I was going to evolve. I needed to surround myself by high performing CEOs as often as I possibly could, so that I could ask questions, I could learn, I could observe. So by October of 22, I attended my first meeting just as an observer with Sean. Left the meeting, called him immediately and said, where do I sign? I mean, I met 20 amazing CEOs that first day, some of them who were in the same trenches that I was in, and some of them who were at the end of their careers, and all they wanted to do was help. And I was sold immediately. So I got started with Vistage very quickly after that. And the marriage was just perfect because I was getting ready to sign the merger documents, and we were going to start this thing, the RS group, and we had these unbelievable goals. And at that exact same moment, I had access to 20 amazing, amazing CEOs in Atlanta who I could text and call and troubleshoot and issue process. I really went into Vistage thinking that I was going to be the weakest link, that I was only ever going to be the one who was receiving guidance. But I learned very quickly that everyone in the group has something to offer. Everyone has something that can be beneficial, whether it was just my young age, whether it was, my ability to hire young people and to communicate with young people. I don't know what it was, but I found myself in those first few Vistage meetings being a part of the team. I wasn't, I kind of felt like I was going to be on the outskirts, just listening and learning for a long time before I felt like I could open my mouth. But they came to me and they engaged me. They brought me into the fold very quickly, and they made me feel valuable, and they made me feel like a part of the team. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Really, for my career, Vistage has been probably. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't met those guys. Really, truly.
Yeah, wonderful. So what's next for you?
So right now, on that front, I am attempting to join YPO right now. Our mutual friend Ali Jamal and I've spoken a ton. YPO, I think, is another organization that I can join where I can continue to meet unbelievable people. I mean, I've been to a couple of events right now. I've met 3 or 4 guys, each of them just more impressive every time I meet them. And so I'm very, very excited about going through the application process with YPO to get involved with them and to continue to build the muscles that I need to get this business to where I want it to go. That's what I'm doing on the social side. Our business right now is we just had another record month for October on our brokerage business. So we're continuing to double down on efforts to grow that and to bring really talented people into the organization. A great brokerage is really just it's a people game. You know, it's how many great talented people can you get in the door and train and enable them to be the best versions of themselves. The asset side of the business has had a very challenging year. It has had a very challenging year. We went into 2025 with really spectacular goals, but you know, this is one of those moments as a CEO where you realize that you've got to be paying really, really close attention to the marketplace and things going on, because tariffs ended up being a very difficult thing for our business to work with. We had 4 clients basically pull back all of their business they were doing with us very quickly at the beginning of the tariff conflict. And it's been challenging because, you know, I went into this year with a full warehouse unit, you know, and I thought I was going to have a full warehouse unit through this year. So we had to get back, put the sales pants back on for our sales unit. And like I told you earlier, it's a relationships thing. There's not, you know, you can't cold call your way to growing your warehouse business. You've got to go meet people. You've got to establish relationships. So I've been super focused on networking events and things of that nature. But you know, we're still hovering at about 60% capacity in that business, where 85% is full. So, you know, we're about break even on that business. Very excited to go into next year. You know, doing our annual planning right now. It's, yes, you can have a bad year, but I'm not going to let that steal any momentum from the culture that our business has right now. Like I said, our brokerage business just put up a record number. I'm just trying to get that energy on both sides of our business so that we can have conversations where our warehouse business had a record month and our brokerage business had a record month. So, yeah, we're just super focused on new relationships. We're paying very close attention to what the administration is doing with tariffs right now, you know, and getting the RS Group name out there to as many players and movers and shakers. And, you know, I'm going down rabbit holes with trade representatives, trade lawyers. I'm going to networking events in paper and pulp, and I'm going into the German Chamber of Commerce and the Israeli Chamber of Commerce and the Colombian Chamber of Commerce. So I'm just getting involved with as many organizations as I possibly can, using sort of the old numbers thing. If I get my name in front of as many people as possible, the opportunity list will grow. So right now we're just heavily focused on good marketing, good communication, great service, and finding good people to come help us, you know, get this thing to the next step.